I'm joined now by the director of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Toby, how have we got into this situation where a Conservative government for 13 years is allowing its intelligence service to discriminate against 92.6%, 96.2% of my electors?
It's shocking. Imagine if it was the other way around, Jacob, and the intelligence services were saying only white people can apply for our summer internships. There would be absolute uproar. They'd be prosecuted under equalities legislation, and rightly so. So why on earth do they think it's perfectly acceptable for them to discriminate, but on the other way?
Well, let me tell you what MI5 says. It says the summer intelligence internship is a lawful measure used by the intelligence agencies to encourage people from underrepresented groups to consider careers with our organisation. Participants in the internship do not receive an offer of permanent employment at the end of it. Anyone who has participated in the internship and who wishes to apply for a permanent position can do so. They will compete against all other candidates in external recruitment processes. The thing that annoys me about that is that constituents in North East Somerset are underrepresented in the security services. Just inevitably, because it is a London-focused, based organisation.
We looked after at the Free Speech Union a woman who worked for the Department of Work and Pensions, and she was asked to organise for people in Plymouth, where she worked as a case officer, an open day organised by the Metropolitan Police. We're trying to recruit, but they said white men weren't welcome at this open day. And, of course, the vast majority of her clients in a particularly deprived part of Plymouth were white men. She kicked up a fuss. She said, I think this is discriminatory. This is effectively a form of racism. And she was investigated for gross misconduct and eventually fired. We got behind her. We got some good lawyers, and eventually she got a settlement for £100,000 and a finding of unfair dismissal. But this kind of thing is happening all over the public sector. And
it's a problem with the Equalities Act that actually allows this to happen. So instead of being, I mean, it's newspeak, isn't it, that instead of being in favour of equalities, it supports discrimination.
It's they've got this loophole in the Equality Act whereby positive discrimination is unlawful, but positive action is lawful. And this would fall under the heading, I think, the intelligence services would argue, of positive action, not positive discrimination, because they're not actually discriminating against people they're giving full-time jobs for, only people they're giving internships for. But if the boot was on the other foot and it was positive action in favour of white people, then you'll bet your bottom dollar it would fall foul of it.
But they are paying these interns and they're providing them with accommodation. It's remunerative.
Yes, and presumably if you've done an internship at MI5, then it's a lot easier to get a full-time position at the end of it. I mean,
well,
that's the entire purpose.
I certainly found in my business that we often employed interns because you had a good idea of who they were. Anyway, I'm now delighted to be joined by Gillian Howard, employment law and consultant with Leighton's LLP. Thank you very much for joining me. Could you explain the background to the law in this and what the law is trying to achieve?
Yes, I have to say I disagree with both of you very strongly. The Equality Act 2010 allows for positive action where there are underrepresented groups, disadvantaged groups, such as ethnic minorities. And it provides that employers are entitled to offer training only to the underrepresented, for example, minority ethnic groups, and also to offer them employment if they are as qualified as someone who is not of an ethnic minority. And if you think about it, my son actually suggested this. He's an ex-Met police officer, and he pointed out that recruits from historically minority communities, if they are engaged, trained and engaged by MI5 and the other security services after that training, they could be very useful, given the nature and profile of the terrorist threats that we've faced in recent years. And there's an urgent need for intelligence assets from
but they can recruit people on merit. If they need good people who can go undercover in certain communities, that's something that they can do in an ordinary employment sense. But they're discriminating against people in my constituency who are underrepresented, particularly from places like Radstock or Peasdown, which have significant levels of deprivation in them.
No, they are not discriminating against.
They are, because they can't get this internship. They're banned from applying.
The law allows...
The law allows, but just because the law allows doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. Black and ethnic minority individuals have been discriminated against.
Poor people from North East Somerset are discriminated against. And now they're discriminated against more.
No, they're not being discriminated
They are,
against.
because they can't get this internship.
The law allows for positive action, as Toby Young suggested.
Yes, but the law is an ass.
That is what it is.
As so often.
Well, that's your view. Thank goodness that the lawmakers have not considered that the Equality Act 2010, sections 158 and 159, which allow for this and allow for positive action and allow to help underrepresented, disadvantaged minorities to get advantages, to level the equal...
But it's not level, because the 96.2% of my constituents who are white cannot apply for these, even if they're poor, even if they've had an education that has let them down, even if, as I said earlier, like James Bond, they are orphans and have had a difficult start in life. They're discriminated against by a law that is an ass.
No, I totally disagree with you. The law provides that underrepresented minorities...
Yeah, you've said that, but why is this right? Why is this moral?
Because it is right and moral.
Why?
Those who have been underrepresented...
Why is it right to discriminate?
And those who have been discriminated against in the past and are not on a level playing field with, for example, white individuals or white males, are being given a chance by the law to be trained and then given an opportunity where they haven't had opportunity.
You're
before.
basically saying two wrongs make a right.
No, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right.
You are, because you're saying past discrimination justifies future discrimination.
No, I'm not saying that, because I don't agree with you.
It is what you said. Anyway, thank you, Julian, for joining me. I've still got with me, from the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. So it's absolutely fine because they were discriminated against in the past, and therefore let's discriminate against the good people of North East Somerset.
White working-class boys have been discriminated against in the past. Why can't they apply for these internships? The point you made. One thing that we're overlooking in this, Jacob, is that black and minority ethnic people themselves resent this kind of favourable treatment. It's patronising to say we have to lower the bar and create special opportunities for them. Otherwise, they won't get these jobs if they have to compete on a level playing field. And when they do get the jobs, they think that everyone else around them assumes they only got the job because of the colour of their skin. They dismiss them secretly as a diversity hire.
And whether American statistics are anything to go by or not, I don't know, but they indicate very strongly that people from Asian backgrounds outperform in all these employment opportunities anyway.
Absolutely. And in America, affirmative action enjoys less support amongst African Americans than it does amongst female white Democrats. I taught at an American Ivy League college, quite a liberal Ivy League college, and we were talking about whether positive discrimination can ever be justified. And at the beginning of the discussion, I said, put your hand up if you're in favour of it. All the white kids in the class put their hands up. The only three who objected to it were the three black kids in the class.
Because they feel, as you say, that they're patronised and that people will think they haven't got there on merit and that their promotion is not deserved.
Yeah, they don't want their competitors to be hobbled. They want to compete on a level playing field. Otherwise, the prize isn't worth the having.
But also, we want to have in this country, don't we, good race relations. And that requires the majority of the population to feel that things are fair. And this is so demonstrably unfair.
Absolutely. I mean, the fundamental problem with all these efforts to tackle long-standing historical racial discrimination is, instead of urging people to judge applicants on the content of their character, their credentials, how they perform in the interview and the entrance exam, by urging them to judge them on the colour of their skin, they're creating these racially divided workplaces. They're sowing the seeds of racial resentment.
Which is really unfortunate because this country actually has a very good record on race relations, much better than some of our comparator nations.
Much better. I mean, it's one of the least racist countries in the world. Often the premise of these kinds of schemes is that these institutions are hidebound by institutional racism, and that we need to make an enormous effort to overcome these historic injustices, whereas in fact we are one of the least racist countries in the world, which is why so many black and minority ethnic people want to come here.
So why is a Home Secretary as good, as capable and as fair as Suella allowing an organisation under her department to behave in this discriminatory and racist way?
I imagine that it's quite difficult to get the civil servants to do much about it. She probably doesn't want to pick a fight with the security services, particularly at this particular time when they're under a lot of pressure, I imagine, trying to nip in the bud terrorist plots by...
Well, if they focus on that rather than discriminating against my constituents, it might be better.
I agree.